is the Matrix?
Okay, hi, welcome back to a brand new video of the Target Individual Program, the Targeted Individual Experience. I am your host, and I am going to continue the reading from the book Angels Don't Play This Harp by Dr. Nick Begich and Janine Manning. So we'll start off with chapter 2. Let's see if I can. All right. So we'll start off on this video with chapter 2, Trails from Tesla to Star Wars. After she returned home to Vancouver, Canada, Manning reported to a new friend who wanted to hear about the Tesla conference. He was John Hutchinson, an inventor who had discovered an anomalous anti-gravity effect some years earlier while he had been restoring antique electrical equipment and building Tesla coils. During the previous years, unofficial delegations from Canada and the United States military groups had visited his laboratory to see the Hutchinson effect. Now he was working alone. The visitor had apparently learned all that they had came to learn. The visitors had apparently learned all that they had came to learn. His requests for copies of the video they filmed in his laboratory were met with sorry. We destroyed all those videos because there wasn't anything on them. He didn't believe it. John Hutchinson told Manning some of the amusing twist of his search for reports about his experiments. I was phoning the Pentagon and asking for John South because I was told that was the name of one of the guys who were here in my lab. By chance, a secretary put me through to the man I described, and it turned out his name was Colonel John Alexander. The name would come up again more than 5 years later, as Manning gradually found out what else could be done with Tesla technology, so-called non-lethal weaponry. John Hutchinson described Colonel Alexander as, isn't this interesting? The name John appears so many times, right here. John Hutchinson, Colonel John Alexander. I talk about in my targeting how the name John is constantly brought up. All right, interesting. There's an alarm going on outside. Very, very low. Okay, it's not any feedback from my headphones, and it stopped as I mentioned it. Oh, no, it starts back again. Anyhow, you guys can hear it because it's really, really low, but I can hear it. So John Hutchinson described Colonel Alexander as a handsome, personable man who was a fun guy to be around throughout the days of the anti-gravity experiments in the Vancouver laboratory. Hutchinson had leisure time to chat with Manning in a now silent laboratory. He shared Tesla lore about beam weaponry and told her that the Soviet Union was mysteriously experimenting with radio frequency signals, beaming them towards North America. Beginning in late 1976, he had been one of many ham radio operators who began picking up the 10 hertz cycle beats or pulse per second frequencies on radio receivers. Ham called the signal the Soviet woodpecker because of the sharp tapping they heard from the extremely low frequency ELF waves. Some researchers speculated that the woodpecker signal was a Tesla type weapon for mind control because the ELF was at the frequency which could resonate with neurons in the human brain, and the transmission could be a carrier wave that was modulated, varied in amplitude, frequency, or phase to carry a hidden effect. Spooky, she joked, dismissing what seemed to be a paranoid speculation. And just to let you guys know how they do real feedback as I'm reading these things, again, it's artificial intelligence, right? So the software that they have, again, using supercomputers, have already archived every video, every piece of document, paper in the world. Okay. And so when I'm reading, even before I read certain things, they would do police sirens or car honking, specifically when it comes to me reading some things. So you guys cannot hear the loud, I shouldn't say loud, I mean the sirens, right? I was about to say loud sirens, but it wasn't. The low frequency sirens, but it is constant as I'm reading this. Again, real-time feedback, AI developed to interact with BCI that has been implanted within TIs in order to, like I said, control, in order to try to intimidate TIs from, doing the research or coming forward to expose what is being done to them. Okay? So, and it's a weird signal that I'm hearing. Just give me a sec. Okay. All right. So it's coming through the headphone. So I just unplugged the headphone. I didn't hear it again, but it's a signal that I haven't heard before. Okay. So still there, but except it's really low now. Anyway, and as I said that, the signal, they use the, all right, can't forget my sound effect. Okay, where was I? So Ham called this signal the Soviets' woodpecker because of the sharp tapping they heard from the extremely low frequency ELF waves. Some researchers speculated that the woodpecker signal was a I'm gonna read it again anyway. That was a Tesla type weapon for mind control because the ELF was at the frequency which could resonate with neurons in the human brain, and the transmission would be a carrier wave that was modulated via in varied in amplitude, frequency, or phase to carry a hidden effect. Okay? Spooky, she joked, dismissing what seems to be a paranoid speculation. Manning learned more about Nikola Tesla 2 years later after another symposium in Colorado Springs. One of the paper in the proceedings of that meeting was by a historian and psychologist, Dr. Mark Schiffer. She would recall it years later when learning about unpublicized experiments in lighting up the upper atmosphere. Schiffer gave Tesla credit for inventing fluorescent lights, just as the revered American inventor Thomas Edison in is the inventor of the incandescent light bulb. The biographer notes that Tesla and Edison clashed over Edison's insistence that the country would stick to his direct current DC technology for electrical lighting, and power distribution. Tesla AC system was better because AC electricity can travel hundreds of miles over power line at high voltage, while a wire carrying DC would be unable to light bulbs a mile away from the generating plant. Strangely, Edison was the one who was lionized in American history books. One of the story that is old and retold, for example, is how he sent men to the Amazon to look for material for the best filament for his light bulb. Edison's persistence is highly praised. However, most people today are unaware that Tesla demonstration showed the filament to be sulfurous, not needed for electric light. Using very high frequency increased vibrations of the electrical current. He showed that the action of the air was more important than the filament, and thus he out Edison, said Dr. Schiffer. Schiffer pulled another part from reference work in his presentation, Nikola Tesla, The History of Lasers and Particle Beams. Particle beam weapons. For an example of Tesla research, two brothers, both scientists, traveled to the Tesla Museum in Yugoslavia and read material not available in North America. They suggest that Tesla particle beam work evolved from his pioneering experiments with X-rays, as well as from his idea of lighting up the skies with his magnifying transmitter by beaming up electrical energy to the stratosphere, the level of the atmosphere above the clouds, about 7 to 31 miles above the ground. What would be some light up display? Manning thought as she read the article. However, she wondered about the wisdom of treating the upper atmosphere as if it was merely gases in a giant fluorescent bulb. She winced as she read a list of military uses for Tesla's many inventions: earthquake contrivances, world radar, particle beam weapons, and brain wave manipulation. One or more magnifying transmitter could theoretically send destructive impulses through the earth to any location, said Schiffer. For example, a well-placed jolt of many millions of volts could theoretically destroy the communication network of any major city. Schiffer had been intrigued by issues that emerged from his investigation. As I said, Schiffer, the word emerge, okay, heard that background. Particle beam weaponry was such a high-level secret that President Jimmy Carter, for example, was screened from vital technical development by the bureaucracy of the CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency, according to General George Keegan, former head of Air Force Intelligence. Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dalton, Ohio, was mentioned in regard to the Air Force Base use of bright young geniuses to attempt a breakthrough in Tesla technology. Based on FBI files, as well as other literature, Schieffer concluded. Great support is lent to the hypothesis that Tesla's work and paper were systematically hidden from public view in order to protect the trail of this top secret work, which today is known as Star Wars. It was a paradox. Nikola Tesla's name was indeed invoked when describing proposed technology that are as potentially planet cleansing as free energy, non-polluting power generation. At the same time, he was credited with inventing weapons which could be used for the Strategic Defense Initiative (SDI), popularly popularly sorry, popularly known as Star Wars. So imagine Nikola Tesla, the importance of his work, and yet he is barely talked about. Okay? He is not given credit for a lot of the invention that was developed because of his research. And his wireless power engineering experiments may have led to a disaster in Siberia. Manning later learned from scientist Oliver uh, Nicholson, Tesla's love of nature seemed to be a contradiction to his desire to arrogantly manipulate it, to light up the sky. Over the next 9 years, she had occasions to think about the deep frustration in Gregory's eyes at the Tesla conference as he described the professor's attitudes of, we'll just have to try it and find out. Meanwhile, one would be God of the element wasn't pulling any punches. A Texan, Dr. Bernard Eastlum, aimed his sights high up to the ionosphere. In 1990, Gregory sent Manning a copy of a 1987 patent which cited Nikola Tesla under the heading Prior Art. He suggests she send for an audio tape of the National Public Radio interview with Eastlum. Manning was astonished when she read the patent title, A Method and Apparatus for Altering a Region of the Earth's Atmosphere, Ionosphere, Magnetosphere. Whichever way she looked at it, the proposed high power beaming of radio frequency energy into the upper atmosphere sound insane. For example, the patent said the technology could manipulate global weather systems. Gregory had been sending her article, which indicates that electric forces do affect the weather, so it came as no surprise. More horrifying, she remembered what a brilliant physicist by the name of Walter Richmond had written about a possible technology which sound very much like Eastlum's concept. The late Walter Richmond and anthropologist Lee Richmond wrote a book titled The Lost Millennium, using the novel format to get the idea out to the world. A disastrous technology described as a solar tap in the book was startlingly similar to aspects of Eastlum patent, although ionospheric heater beam power from antenna underground up to the ionosphere, and the Richmond solar tap concept goes the other direction. Both involve connecting the Earth with the ionosphere. The novel described a solar tap that just wouldn't quit. It began from a technology that started from the ground, from which engineers beam up a pathway for some of the ionospheric electricity to ride back down. This planetary short circuit usually blew out a fraction of a second, but one day the fictional engineer made a fatal mistake. They kept the solar tap going while a solar flare surges into the ionosphere and then to the ground via the ionized pathway of the tap beam. And the surge of power from the tap beam became an avalanche. An avalanche at the pole in the vertical plane of the planet magnetic field where the winds of magnetism could not rise to blow it out. 1 trillion watt second of energy unleashed their fury on the polar caps in the first flash. Even as it discharged, the ionosphere was recharged from the solar furnace. The first flash became a mighty roar that poured an increased and now steady stream of energy through the now stabilized short circuit. Kilocubit after square kilocubit of frozen wasteland boiled. Watt after watt of ever increasing avalanche energy lit the polar caps with a glare that had never been seen before. Could such a disaster happen in real life? Manning reread the introduction of The Lost Millennium. It said that in 1962, Walter Richmond was researching atmospheric electricity and developed the theory of what the couple called the solar tap, a source of abundant power from the electrical current that exists as a potential between the ground and the ionosphere. The physics is exact. The power is there for the tapping. Such massive amount of power could be distributed by broadcasting it, which Nikola Tesla has proven could be done before 1911. The two scientists believe that automobiles, industries, and homes could be turned into broadcast power, such as radios are turned to a certain frequency. The bad news was that unless carefully handled, broadcast power would resonate with the structural steel of buildings in a destructive way, Richmond said. Manning's attention was caught by the scientist's own life story. In 1963, Richmond took their research paper on the solar tap to then President John F. Kennedy's science advisor. They planned to also take them to the United States Science Advisory Committee. Instead, as I was about to say, the United States Science Advisory Committee Instead, they received a shock from their government. Our paper was placed under the security label Secrecy Act legislation, and we were offered a government contract for research, which we refused. It would have placed us under the secrecy syndrome, in which we had refused for some years to take part, Lee wrote. We were told to sit down and shut up in no uncertain terms. The vision of the fictional solar tap lingered in Manning's mind. The book described an experiment gone wrong that started an unquenchable avalanche of electrons. A character in the book said, "The power's there, enough to blow up the earth if it's misused." This is what the late Walter Richmond knew, that had to be placed under the Secrecy Act. If the electrical power of the ionosphere avalanche into Earth in a continuous flow, his book's character said it would burn hell out of the spot where it touched Earth, empty the capacitor that the ionosphere and feed directly from the solar wind. Earth's an electrical motor. When the motor began to run wild, it would increase its rotational speed. Eventually, the Earth would explode from increasing centrifugal stress. Manning read the novel description of the fiery, steamy, noisy destruction of a planet, a shock wave racing at the speed of sound, toppling great cities. Destruction continued for days, and the planet, whipped about on its axis like a thing tortured. The Richmond novel vividly raised questions about the wisdom of pulsing a radio frequency beam which could make an ionized and therefore electrical conducting channel between Earth and the ionosphere. Even if there was no danger of accidental tapping into the ionospheric powerhouse and getting zapped in return, dis- disrupting a part of the upper atmosphere violently is in itself a dangerous experiment. She later was told by independent scientists uh, ionospheric heaters are nothing new. Manet had learned from articles sent her from Gregory. However, Eastland's invention made it possible to tap the ionosphere with a much more powerful and more focused beam. A few years later, Gregory telephoned and said in a choked voice, the maniacs are actually going to do it in Alaska. The U.S. Navy and Air Force would be paying a contractor, Arco Power Technologies Inc., to build a super powerful ionospheric heater, an array of antennas in the Alaskan bush outside of Anchorage. Over the next year, Gregory mailed her articles on ionospheric heaters and related topics, which he found in science journal dating back to the 1970s. He gave her the phone number of a man named Claire Zucker in Anchorage. Gregory became increasingly angry and pessimistic about the state of his planet's health and eventually sent his entire file on ionospheric heaters to her. I give up. I've written to everyone I could think of. You're a journalist. Do something with this. His words and the thought of what he called mad science in our sky weighed on her. But she was again employed as a reporter for a daily newspaper in a British Columbia city and had no time for starting any campaign. One day, she photocopied excerpt from the file, wrote an introductory page, and gave the packet to the managing editor at the newspaper. He sent it to the newspaper chain's columnist in Ottawa, but the man never published a word about ionospheric experiments. In early 1994, he telephoned a reporter at the Anchorage paper. Gregory had said, that, as I said that about the paper, she don't want me, and I'm sorry for the pause here, but in the past, when they've done interviews on target individuals, they usually interview TIs who are so psychologically damaged that, in order to discredit those of us who were actually doing research into really trying to understand the technology, how it worked, and what they were doing. Right? So they would never interview TIs like myself, Alda Misteriosa, who is another woman on YouTube who has a YouTube channel. I forgot her name, but she literally, and this is one of the best YouTube channel you can find about target individuals. I think her name was Ella, right? And she's had some great people on their interviews with actual people who know about these technologies, who work on these technologies, right? So her show, I think, is called Ella something. I don't remember exactly what her channel name is, but now that I think about it, I'm going to go look it up and I'll mention it in another video. Okay. All right. So, um, in the early 1994, she telephoned a reporter at the Anchorage paper. Gregory had said the man was writing an article about the project that would beam so much power up to the ionosphere for military experiments. In a discouraged tone of voice, the reporter said that his editor was not interested in art investigative story of any depth about the project. The stance of the paper was that the military infusion of money would provide jobs. Manning photocopied her now thick file on the topic of ionospheric heaters and electric weather forces and sent it to a reporter anyway. Her next call was to Claire Zucker. A year later, she would be in Alaska interviewing him and others who were concerned about the Sky Buster, as Dr. Richard Williams of Princeton had named the proposed super powerful ionospheric heater. The sequence of events that took her to Anchorage began with Dennis Speck, an anti-nuclear activist then living in Alaska, sent a news item to an Australian magazine. HAARP should be carefully studied by large groups of independent scientists, Dr. Patrick Flanagan. Okay, let's move on to chapter 3. Let's see. Okay, yeah, we'll do chapter 3 in this video as well. Okay, chapter 3. What's going on up there? Nick Begich can't be categorized by his long ponytails and youthful appearance. He started his first business in 1974 at the age of 16 and has worked in mining, construction, real estate, and more recently, a mid-level managerial job at the Anchorage School District. Service in Alaskan politics and labor union organizing brought him public service awards, a couple of appointments to the Alaskan Council of Economic Education, and 2 terms of president of the Alaska Federation of Teachers, AFT. But it was his longtime interest in science that earned Begich the informal title of evolving electric. Is it S? Oh, sorry, electric. His life took another turn when he happened to be thumbing through the April 1994 issue of an Australian magazine that Patrick Flanagan suggests he check out. When the name of Nick's hometown newspaper caught his eye, odd that Nexus would print an item from the Anchorage Daily News, he commented to his wife, Sheila. The content of the news brief startled them. The federal government was about to introduce some weird technology right in their backyard. Figuratively speaking, Nick copied the reference and headed to the Anchorage Municipal Library to search out the original story. A November 20, 1994 letter to Anchorage Daily News from Eric Nashlam. It told about a military-funded project called HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, intended to perturb the ionosphere for Department of Defense experiments. Nashlam letter said, some startling revelation came to light while researching the background of a military-sponsored project starting construction in Gagona. HAARP will be used to understand, simulate, and control ionospheric processes that might alter the performance of communication, and surveillance system, according to a HAARP fact sheet. The HAARP experimental impact statement claimed negligible ionospheric impact with no impact to climate, weather, or ozone layer. And Arco Company had the bid for construction of HAARP. Arco Power Technologies Inc., APTI, holds a patent number 4686605 method and apparatus for altering a region in the Earth atmosphere, ionosphere, and or uh, magneto magneto. Yeah, I can't even say this right now. It's like, my brain is just, I can't. I pronounced it before. I know that, but I just can't do it right now. Okay, so please forgive me. Inventor Bernard J. Eastland, uh, assignee APTI Inc., Los Angeles, which matches closely the HARP proposal dealing with transmitting extremely large amount of radio frequency energy into the ionosphere. It is evident that HARP will at least test, if not fully implement, the patent capabilities. Okay. Patent number 4686605 claims it has the following use: cause total disruption of communication over a large portion of the earth, disrupting not only land-based communication, but also airborne communication and sea communication, both surface and subsurface, missile or aircraft destruction, deflection, or confusion, weather modification by altering solar absorption, ozone, nitrogen, etc. Concentration would be artificially increased. Whether or not API was using that particular pattern for HARP beggars question the wisdom of the whole effect. If this technology works, it is in humanity's interest for a secretive bureaucracy to control. Is it in humanity's interest for a secretive bureaucracy to control something that could stop all electronic communication or change the planet's weather pattern? The library had the pattern on microfile. Its abstract summary read: a method and apparatus for altering at least one selective region which normally exists above the Earth's surface. The region is excited by electron cyclotron's resonance, heating the nearby, increase its charged particle density. In one embodiment, circularly polarized electromagnetic radiation is transmitted upward in a direction substantially parallel to and along a field line which extends to the region of plasma to be altered. The radiation is transmitted at a frequency which excites electron cyclotron resonance to heat and accelerate the charged particle. This increase in energy can cause ionization of neutral particles, which are then absorbed as part of the region, thereby increasing the charged particle density of the region. When Begich examined the patent section titled Prior Art, he was surprised to see reference to articles about Nikola Tesla. Eastland's drawings did appear similar to patent issues to Nikola Tesla in the late 1900s and early 20th century. Tesla's name has been associated with wild schemes, and Begich wanted to find out why would-be planetary engineers were still quoting the deceased inventor. Begich knew that Tesla was credited with starting an earthquake, generating balls of electricity, electromagnetic energy, and other wonders. Towards the end of his life, Tesla had claimed to hold the keys to creating a shield in the upper atmosphere that would destroy any incoming aircraft. A cold chill ran through Begich after he read the article. The article cited. The first was the New York Times of December 8, 1915. Nikola Tesla, the inventor, had filed patent applications on the essential parts of a machine, possibilities which test a layman's imagination and promise a parallel of Thor's shooting thunderbolt from the sky to punish those who had angered the gods. Suffice it to say that the invention will go through space with a speed of 300 miles per second, a manless ship without propellant engine or wings sent by electricity to any desired point on the globe on its errand of destruction, if destruction its manipulators wishes to effect. It is not a time, says Dr. Tesla yesterday, to go into the detail of this thing. It is founded upon the principle which means great things in peace. It can be used for great things in war. But I repeat, this is no time to talk about such thing. It is perfectly practicably to transmit electrical energy without wires and produce destructive effects at a distance. I have already constructed a wireless transmitter which makes this possible and have described it in my technical publication, amongst which as I said, technical publications. You want to know why they do that? Because I'm probably going to go look for it. That's why. Okay. I've already constructed a wireless transmitter which makes this possible, and I've described it in my technical publication, amongst which I refer to my patent number 1119732. There go that number 32 again. All right. Can you tell maybe that number was used to, again, try to prevent me from going forward with my research or even continue to read from this book? It's not going to work. Recently granted. Which transmitter of this kind we are enabled to project? Okay. With transmitters of this kind, we are enabled to project electrical energy from any amount to any distance and apply it for innumerable purpose, both in war and peace. Through the universal adoption of this system, ideal conditions for the maintenance of law and order will be realized, for then the energy necessary for the enforcement of right and justice will be normally productive. Yet potential and in any moment available for attack and defense. The power transmitted need not be necessarily destructive, for if distance is made to depend upon it, its withdrawal or supply will bring about the same result as those now accomplished by force of arms. Begich noticed the next article referred to in the patent also run in the New York Times on September 22nd, 1940, and read, Nikola Tesla, one of the truly great inventors who celebrated his 84th birthday on June 10th, tells the writer that he stands ready to divulge to the United States government the secret of his teleforce, with which, he said, airplane's motor would be melted at a distance of 250 miles so that an invisible Chinese wall of defense would be built around the country. His teleforce, he said, is based upon an entirely new principle of physics that no one has ever dreamed about. Difference from the principle embodied in his inventions related to the transmission of electrical power from a distance, for which he has received a number of basic patterns. This new type of force, Mr. Tesla said, would operate through a beam 1/100th million of a square centimeter in diameter and could, as I said, 100 millions. Or they know I'm going to sue their behinds big time. Okay? I'm not talking about tens of millions. I'm not even talking about hundreds of millions. I'm talking about trillions. Trillions. Uh, this new type of force, Mr. Tesla said, would operate through a beam 1/100 millions of a square centimeter in diameter and could be generated from a special plant that would cost no more than 2 million and would take only about 3 months to construct. The beam, he states, involved four new inventions, two of which already have been tested. One of these is the method and apparatus for producing rays and other manifestations of energy in free air, eliminating the necessity of a high vacuum. A second is a method and process for producing very great electrical force. The third is a method of amplifying this force, and the fourth is a new method of producing a tremendous electrical repellent force. This would be the projector or gun of the system. The voltage for propelling the beam to its objective, according to the inventor, will attain a potential of 50 million volts. With this enormous voltage, he said, microscopic electrical particles of matter will be catapulted on their mission of defensive destruction. He has been working on this invention, he added, for many years and has recently made a number of improvements in it. There was a third reference, apparently written by Tesla, that beggars could not obtain. Tesla's idea in these articles raised more questions in beggars' minds about the version of a law and order likely to rise from any military organization controlling such technologies. He believed that if this technology were to be implemented anywhere, it should be done so openly and honestly, and only when it can be safe and worthwhile for improving the human condition. The idea of unleashing such power into the Earth's ionosphere disrupted him deeply. Beggars made telephone calls, did more reading, and heard the reaction of a few independent scientists to the military-funded project in the sky. Their request to the military could be stated bluntly as, "Back off, Charlie. This is our planet too." There was another aspect that concerned him besides HAARP's possible effect on weather and on emergency communication in the Alaskan bush. Over the years, he had seen impressive studies saying that even low power levels of pulse radio frequency beaming could affect human physiology, minds, and mood. He described he decided to find out more, much more, from reputable sources. It would be foolish to hit the alarm button about HAARP without being certain. One one concern was positively speculative. One of the HAARP documents stated that, excuse me, yeah. One concern was clearly speculative. One of the HAARP's documents stated that ionosphere, excuse me, I had a drink of water. Ionospheric disturbance have been detected and ascribed to earthquake, such as the Alaskan earthquake on March 28, 1964. He wondered if the reverse might be true, if deliberate ionosphere disturbance could in turn resonate with the materials in the earth and trigger an earthquake. The earthquake question was only one of the questions nagging at the independent researchers. Beggars did not know it at the time, but the research would focus his energy in a way that would attract additional similar-minded people. Eventually, their directed energies would perturb something bigger than themselves. Perhaps his life had led up to this. Nick Beggars Jr. was raised in a political family where making a difference was a way of life. His father, Nick Beggars Sr., served as a state senator and later a representative in the United States Congress, and his mother, Peggy, was politically active in Alaska for more than 30 years. After the disappearance of the airplane carrying his father and U.S. House Majority Leader Hale Boggs in 1972, when Nick Beggars was a teenager, his life changed irrevocably. However, the theme instilled by his parents was one of service and persistence. He and his 5 siblings between themselves also chalked up a lifetime of political experience, but an equally strong thread in Nick's life was an interest in science. His early investigation led to the invitation to the 1978 International Biorhythm Research Association Conference in Atlanta as a youthful science outsider amongst 50 senior scientists from around the world. Most were in the life sciences. The youth presented a simple paper about but the idea that his country's researchers over-specialize and that multidisciplinary teams were a way to break through in science. His association from this early experience led to a lasting interest in electrophysiology and life science. The studies became his creative outlet while he worked at mundane administrative jobs. With his background, he could sort through the HAARP technical documents and see implications of its types of ionospheric interference. As he saw it, the government had understated the risk, as had fellow Alaskan Claire Zickerg and others. He sent piles of files out to friends around the world, and information flooded back. In the summer of 1994, Beggars wrote an article about HAARP in Nexus magazine. To get the story out, he mentioned the Eastland patent, but acknowledged that it was controversial. The United States military denied that the HAARP project has anything to do with these patents. However, a careful review of the government documents leading to the contract with APTI leads one to the conclusion that the military is deliberately attempting to mislead. While it is true that the device being built will not produce the full effect described in the patent, it is a necessary step in providing the effectiveness of the technology in advance of a larger antenna array. Patent number 4686605, issued August 11, 1987, is one of 3 related patents that the same inventor, one of which was locked up under a Navy national security order, excuse me, in the late 1980s. In his Nexus article, Beggars said that the Eastland patent go beyond the application dreamt of by Tesla. The Eastland patent said that scientists in the previous few years had been trying to learn about the belts of trapped electrons and ions above the Earth in order to control and use the phenomena for beneficial uses. For example, in the late 1950s and early 1960s, both the United States and the USSR detonated a series of nuclear devices to generate large numbers of charged particles at various altitudes. This can cause confusion of or interfere with or even complete disruption of guidance system employed by even the most sophisticated of planes and missiles. The ability to deploy and transmit over very wide areas of the Earth electromagnetic waves of varying frequency provides a unique ability to interfere at will with all modes of communication, land, sea, or air. At the same time, this invention provides the ability to put unprecedented amount of power in the Earth atmosphere at strategic location and to maintain the power injection level, particularly if random pulsing is employed and in a manner far more precise and better control than therefore accomplished by the prior art, particularly by the detonation of nuclear devices, which is used to disrupt another communication, can be employed by one knowledgeable of this invention as a communication network at the same time. In addition, once once owns sorry, in addition, once one's own communication network is established, the far-reaching effect of this invention could be employed to pick up communication signals for others for intelligence purposes. Islam spelled out other possible development of his superheater in the sky. Missiles or aircraft destruction, depletion, or confusion could result, particularly when relativistic, particularly when relativistic particles are employed. Also, large region of the ionosphere could be lifted to an unexpected high altitude so that the missile encountered unexpected drag forces with resultant destruction or detection. Weather modification is possible by, for example, altering upper atmosphere wind patterns by constructing one or more plumes of atmospheric particles, which will act as a lens or focusing device. Also, molecular modification of the atmosphere can take place so that positive environmental effect can be achieved. Besides actually changing the molecular composition of an atmospheric region, a particular molecule or molecules can be chosen for increased persistence. As I said, the word particular molecule. Okay. For example, ozone, nitrogen, etc., concentration in the atmosphere could be artificially increased. Similarly, environmental enhancement could be achieved by causing the breakup of various chemical entities such as carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, nitrous oxide, and the like. Begich pointed out to Nexus Reader that the HAARP device being built at the time was not big enough to test all of Eastland. It should be all to test all of Eastland Eastland's ideas, but it certainly looked like the military was interested in his patent. Begich had experience with procurement, the bureaucratic term of getting government contracts, and had once worked in the heart of Texas defense contractor country. The facts of this case jumped out at him. On November 3rd, 1993, the U.S. Air Force announced that the prime contractor on the first phase of the HAARP project was ARCO Power Technology Incorporated, APTI. At the time the project was put out for bids, APTI was a subsidiary of Atlantic Richfield Oil Company, ARCO, and owned the patent rights to Islam ionosphere altering schemes. Begich looked up APTI in the Dun and Bradstreet directory of corporations 42 and learned that APTI had a president in Los Angeles and a staff of 25 employees in Washington, D.C., with sales of only $5 million a year. How did a small subsidiary get a military contract for such a large project? According to the record, it won the right to build the project through exemptions in the military procurement process. The HAARP contract with APTI was more than five times larger than APTI annual sales. As Begich saw it, the only way a virtually unknown company in the military contracting arena could get such a contract is if they had proprietary information needed by the project. The trail circled back to the Eastland patent. Begich quoted the May-June 1994 issue of Microwave News, in which Eastland described a full global shield of accelerated electrons created by radio frequency RF transmitters. The HAARP project obviously looks like a first step towards this. Eastland told the editor, however, he noted that the usage he described would need a significantly more powerful device with a much larger antenna than the HAARP array. While the Eastland controversy continued, Begich wrote that a February 1990 paper from the Navy and Air Force made it clear that the project goal is to learn how to manipulate the ionosphere on a more grand scale than the then Soviet Union could do with its similar facilities. HAARP would be the largest ionospheric heater in the world, located in a latitude more conducive for putting Eastland invention into practice. Looking at the northern light, as the aurora is called in Alaska, is not the point of HAARP. Begich quote from the U.S. Air Force Record of Decision, High Frequency Active Aerial Research Program, HAARP Final Environmental Impact Statement of October 18, 1993. The data obtained from the purpose research would be used to analyze basic ionospheric properties and to assess the potential for developing ionospheric enhancement technology for communication and surveillance system. A potential DoD, Department of Defense application of the research is to provide communication to submerged submarine. These and many other research applications are expected to greatly enhance present DoD technology. The Air Force and Navy propose to build and operate the most versatile and capable ionospheric research facility in the world. The government intends to utilize the unused over-the-horizon backscatter Razor site near Gagona, Alaska, for this program. Research requirements stipulate that the selected site must fall in the range of latitude between 61 and 65 degrees, either north or south. Certain constraint included that the site must be on U.S. soil, on DoD land, to the maximum extent practical. The response to the Nexus article showed that more people were interested in HAARP than the Alaskan researchers have originally expected. Begich noticed that many of the independent researchers were afraid to identify themselves and take on the government. One group of individuals whom Begich appreciating their wishes to be anonymous, began to refer to as the guys in the bush, sent him volumes of files that they saw as relating to HAARP. Books, papers, news clipping, and internet item arrive each week, as well as occasional government records. He paid less attention to the internet item unless they mentioned books or articles or pattern he could check out firsthand. One day, a box arrived at the Begich family home containing about 18 inches of new file. About this time, Sir Anton, I'm not going to butcher his name, of the Open International University of Complementary Medicine invites Begich to present a paper at the World Congress on Alternative Medicines and to receive a doctorate degree in traditional medicine. The honor was totally unexpected, and he packed for travel. As it turned out, circumstances did not allow him to travel to Sri Lanka, so he planned a trip to Finland instead. In Finland, he would at last see his old friend from a 1978 conference and from correspondence, Dr. Raijo Mäkelä. All right, in order, let me tell you something. So when I came home tonight, my grandniece was here with her daughter. Her young daughter is like 2 months old. And guess what her name is? Her name is Michaela. So I want you to understand how they know I'm going to be reading this. And due to the short chapter of chapter 2, they know I'll possibly do chapter 3, you know. But yeah, not working. I'm just going to keep exposing what it is that they're doing and how they can manipulate the people around you. All right. Going to keep talking about this, going to keep exposing it. All right. So remember, this is technology. This is not supernatural. This is the development of weapon, particularly silent sound spectrum, to basically hijack your conscious mind and for them to hijack and take over your thought patterns and to interject new thought pattern, a different way of thinking, to change your personality and to change who you are to who they want you to be. Okay? All right. So, Dr. Rachel Mäkelä, in order to talk about promoting Mäkelä's scientific discovery in electric physiology. Meanwhile, one of the HAARP's researchers in Canada has written to thank him for the Nexus article. Janine Manning was a writer who had just completed a manuscript, The Coming Energy Revolution. She suggested they collaborate on an article for an American publication. Begich replied by telephoning her in Vancouver. They learned that each had too much present information in their files to compress into an article. It had to be a book. On this stopover at the Seattle airport before flying to Finland, Begich met with Manning for a few hours. As I said, Begich. Okay, here. Why? Remember I talk about, see, the more I do research and the more I talk about these things, is the more they use threats, coercive threats, psychological threats in order to silence me. The threat of homelessness, the threat of taking my disability, and stuff like that. And that's fine because the truth is more important. Okay. And I want others to understand and know that regardless of how they may threaten you, once you find your purpose, and if your purpose is to expose what's being done, you're going to do it regardless of the outcome. It's like government whistleblowers who see corruption being done in their government agency and they come forward and blow the whistle, but because the agencies cover it up, so they go outside to the press, okay? Knowing that they will probably end up in jail, they'll probably lose their families, their freedom, but they still do it anyway, right? There's a greater purpose, and we all must find our greater purpose, and this was mine, okay? So, while he was in Finland, the only unsettling event was that HAARP-related files which he had forwarded to Rigel Michaela had mysteriously disappeared from Rigel's office. The two men discussed the project anyway and concluded that HAARP was an affront to good sense and a threat to safety. Okay? This conclusion was based on Michaela's advanced understanding of the effect of radio waves on people. Back in Anchorage in early 1995, the Beggages sent an airplane ticket to Janine Manning, and their 9-year-old son moved into his sister's bedroom for 2 weeks when she arrived. Nick took time off from work, and they spread HAARP-related files for 20 feet across the carpet in his study while typing on his computer and a borrowed notebook computer. Sheila joined them for a visit to no HAARP activity Claire Zickert and his wife, and they also drove hours in the bush country to speak with other activists. The most revealing interview, however, took place over the telephone line. While in Alaska, Janine phoned Houston, Texas, and interviewed a man who has apparently been elbowed out of the inner circle of gigawatt heater project planners. It was because he talked too much to the media. Scientists build toys. This is a neat big toy. Dr. Bernard Eastland talking about HAARP. Tests of this kind could cause irreversible damage. Dr. Richard Williams, 1998. Okay, so I am going to end the video here, and the next video in this format, on this topic, will be chapter 4, Skybuster Under Secrecy. Okay, so stay tuned for the next video, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video.
What is the Matrix?